Good morning, friends. Oh, it's actually afternoon here in Atlanta. I am so delighted to be back with you for another Tea and Jam with me. And today I'm bringing you a conversation with my friend June, whom I have known for well over a decade. But I'm excited to have this conversation with her because she's one of those people that I've known in a variety of capacities through friends, through events that we both go to, but I don't think I've ever had a chance to really have this kind of an intimate conversation with her. So you'll be getting to know her as I'll be getting to know her at the same time. And so I'm going to see, is she there? Knock, knock, knock. June, are you
I'm here. I'm
there?
here.
June,
Hello.
welcome. Hello. Hi. Um, June, you're just like one of those gadabout towns. Like you organize all the things, you've had all the jobs, like you're in this really interesting moment of chrysalis in your life, and excited to have this opportunity to have this conversation with you. I think a lot of folks who are listening to this conversation will know that the reason why I'm having these conversations is because I am endeavoring to put on my first full-length storytelling show. And that show is called I'm a Little Teapot, which is why the show, my conversations, is called Tea and Jam with Me. And that uh, is about my first couple of years of adulting. So engaging in conversations with other artists and creatives about their journeys with work and purpose. The four tenets of the project are actually
Ooh.
passion, purpose, possibility, and power. So I wanted to talk with you because a few things.
Hmm.
One, you're just always somebody I've admired greatly. And two, it's Pride Month. And you are a person who is fairly new into the being a prideful human being.
It's true.
Um, so as Amanda Plum used to say when we used to do North Avenue Lounge, as which is she was actually quoting Maria Von Trapp. Let's start at the beginning. It is a very good
Yes.
start.
we
Tell
we
us a
we
little.
love we love an Amanda Plum moment. We love a Julie Andrews moment. Let's do it.
Yes,
Yes.
indeed. Tell us a little about your origin story.
Okay. Well, I started off life as a shrimpy brown kid in outside just outside of Detroit. Came down south when I was like 9. I've been living in Georgia for like, oh gosh, something, I guess like 30, yeah, over 30 years now. So I'm an adopted southerner. I would never claim to be native, but I feel like other folks who were born here say that I'm like grandfathered in. So I will leave that to them to decide. But I have been a musician and a writer like since adolescence. And I sort of followed those paths and found myself working eventually in public radio here in Atlanta. I was a producer at WABE, working in their arts and culture programming, as just I like to tell folks that I aimed microphones at things, but it was a lot more than that. It was a lot of writing. It was a lot of like just being in the arts scenes around town and talking to lots and lots of people and just sort of like um lending the radio station's platform to artists and arts organizations. And that was very fulfilling work that like really gave me a sense of place and purpose, and made me feel at home. After about a dozen years at the radio station, I moved over to the podcast space. I was working for iHeartRadio for about 5 years. Um, and yeah, and in that time, um, about 2022, I came out as transgender at 40 years old. Um, and subsequently, the long-term, like the marriage that I had been in, ended, and I found myself single and living alone, um, for the first time as an adult, and navigating both that and what it means to come out, especially at an older age. Um, and so, yeah, it's like the last 2+ years have been navigating this new world of like sort of rediscovering and reclaiming who it is that I am. And uh, thankfully, um, I credit it to honesty and hormone replacement therapy. I am doing that as a much happier, much more clear-headed person. So yeah, that's I think that brings us up to date.
Okay, we're up to date. So so many places I want to take this conversation now. Let's talk a little bit about work first, and then we're going to go back to your transition.
Let's do
Um,
it.
I'm curious about the moving from the NPR station WABE to iHeart. Like, what was that pivot like to? Because I feel like NPR is getting more and more into podcasting, but I'm curious, what was there a culture shift? What was that like for you? I feel like you're somebody who really loves the audio form,
Mhm.
and I just want to know what that was like, and then you're gonna have to catch the audience up about because you've also had a recent change in work life since then.
Yes, I have. I will get to that.
Mhm.
So yeah, after having been at the radio station for almost like just about 13 years, um I I really loved the work. I adored working at the radio station. I adored getting to do what I was doing because I felt like it was a pretty rare opportunity, um like as a producer and an arts and culture reporter. I got to do a lot of like interviews in the field, creating very sound rich things, creating feature stories that could be longer than 90 seconds. Um, and I got to work in the live aspect of like, because the at the end of my tenure there, I was co-producing a show called City Lights with Lois Reitzes,
Yeah.
and a lot of that show, I mean, that show was almost wholly live when I was there, and so it was a lot of um, booking booking interviews, doing research, writing questions, and getting very heavily into like the the pre-production side of it, and then just sort of like putting a person in the studio and just like having to like let it go. um it was a very fast-paced job, and I mean, radio, especially live radio, is content production, and like it is a hungry beast. Like every day at 11 o'clock, there is a show, and you have to have like 53 minutes, 52 to 53 minutes of material prepared. Um, and as soon as that's done, you got the next day to worry about, and then the next after that, and it just never ends, and there was never really time to process or celebrate or anything. It was just like shoveling content into the airwaves. And um after a while, I started to feel the exhaustion of that. um and also, like, working at a nonprofit has has its own unique set of challenges to it. um and so an opportunity opened up at iHeartRadio, and I leapt at it. um and it was still working in my field. It was still getting to work on on shows, and it was podcasting, which I was already pretty passionate about. I had attempted to sort of force the issue, force the conversation of podcasting at the radio station all the way back in like 2012 by just starting a podcast without asking permission from anybody. Um, uh, and that lasted not a very long time, because there was when you try to do something inside of an institution without asking permission, as it turns out, you get no support, and so that unfortunately did not last very long. Um, but it was podcasting was something that I had been pushing to do, and then I've discovered it, since leaving the radio station happily, like, oh yay, good, great, they are producing lots of really high quality podcasts there now with really great hosts and really good producers, and I'm very happy for those folks over there. I'm glad that they finally did that.
So when you went to iHeart, you were able to experience the longer timeline. The
Yes, it was it was a much more relaxed work space, or workload. It was not the never-ending grind of daily show. I do know that there are some folks who do work on daily podcasts. No thank you. And but yeah, getting to work on a show that's like weekly or even just like seasonal, it's still like it's a huge amount of work. But um I would compare like what a normal work week would look like at the radio station versus what it looked like working on podcasts, and there was absolutely no comparison at all. I don't know how I kept that up for a dozen years. It's bonkers.
So and my understanding is that what happened to the podcast field is that like it kind of became the Wild West really quickly because you had everything from these like two guys talking about their sandwich that they ate for lunch over, a microphone to like self-produced all the way to the like highly produced celebrities getting mega dollars, big content podcasts and everything in between.
Yes.
And so that was the point you entered into the field when you came on at iHeart. And now the field is shrinking back down a little bit because people realize that it's not quite sustainable.
Yeah, it's interesting that like I have seen a lot of interesting experiments. Getting a huge name to host a podcast does not necessarily mean that anybody is going to listen to said podcast. Um it does, yeah, it just does not always translate. Uh and like for real, like God bless like the dudes sitting in their living room talking about their sandwiches. They've got a lot on their minds. Let's just say. But yeah, it's interesting. It is like, yes, it was and still is to some extent the Wild West. Maybe not so much anymore. Um but like I think that like I mean podcasting is big business. I know that like one of the things that like iHeartRadio touts is that it is like um right now maybe the most lucrative part of their business, which is really interesting. um and iHeart is producing podcasts at like just an enormous volume that like other houses just simply can't keep up with. As much as I love like like NPR podcast. Oh my gosh, I love NPR podcasts so much. Yeah, there's hundreds of shows coming out of the offices at iHeart, and it's kind of staggering. At the same time, some of my favorite shows are ones that survive on Patreons and are done in people's living rooms, like for the love of the game. Like one of my favorite shows right now is This Ends at Prom, hosted by BJ Colangelo and her wife Harmony Colangelo. They are BJ Colangelo is a film writer, and the podcast is they talk about teen girl movies, and it is freaking delightful. They've they recently did a whole episode about the animated movie Nimona, which I adore. And so yeah, I got a lot out of that. But yeah, they're just doing it in their living room, and people support them on Patreon, and they're doing fine. Like they're doing like public appearances and live shows and stuff, and I love that people are still able to do that without going through an enormous like corporate entity like iHeart, like Spotify, like Amazon, et cetera, et cetera.
So, where this is leading to is that
Mm-hmm.
the shrinking of the field has led to you, unfortunately, were laid off recently.
Yes, I am now in my second week, I think, of unemployment. I was among about 20 producers who were laid off a couple of weeks ago. Um it was a little bit of a bloodbath. And it was totally out of left field. Um uh the reasons for it, I think, are complicated and things that I probably should not speculate on publicly. Um, but uh, yeah, I was caught off guard by being laid off. But this is maybe my first time in 20 something years where I don't have a job, and I don't have anything to do during the day. Um, and I do have, thank God, I do have the benefit of having a a decent severance package. Um, and so I'm allowing myself the time to just sort of like take 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 some time and just be and relax, and apparently play a whole lot of Cult of the Lamb. Um,
Okay.
yeah. So I'm yeah,
So
right now I'm just sort of relaxing. And what is the LinkedIn language? Oh, I'm seeking my next opportunity.
nice. I love it. Well, this reminds me that one of the things that I had invited you to consider doing today is to play a little something. And because one of the times that I ran it out, is I mentioned that you're all over the place in Atlanta. I just see you at all. I know if I run into you at a place, I'm like, oh, I'm in the right place to be because June only does the most fun thing and cute
Oh,
things.
thank you. Oh my gosh, that's so nice to hear. Because like there are definitely people who are that to me.
Uh-huh.
Like if I see Terry Kearns,
Oh, 100%.
if I
Yes.
see Terry Kearns at an event, like I'm like, oh, okay, good. I've made right decisions.
Yes, exactly. Yes, I'm living my life right. So we ran into each other last year at Chomp and Stomp, and I think you were there to see your friend Robin Shakedown play.
Yes,
And
I was. Yeah.
but you, after she finished, you were just off to the side, playing your own guitar and singing your little cute ass off. And you play. Um, June is in her happy place right now. Like this is, I was talking about my
Yes, the wine bottle of inspiration.
indeed, and I'll light it up. You were in your power and your passion.
Oh. Yes.
They were
I feel like, yeah, I think that the more that I have allowed myself to just sort of embrace my possibly on the spectrum obsession with just like noodling around on the guitar, the happier I am. So yeah, I was doing that. I was definitely existing in those spaces. Yes.
so why don't you play something for us?
Yeah, I would be happy to. I'm going to, while I'm doing this, I'm going to take my earbuds out, so I unfortunately won't be able to hear you, just so that I don't get all tangled up. Um, okay, there is a 60 to 70% chance I'm going to mess this one up. Um, But so at the beginning of the year, like around the springtime, I recorded an album's worth of music for a friend's play, and this is one of the songs that was on it. It was like the one song with vocals. Um, but this is Angels Avatars. That's close enough. Was that okay? How'd that sound?
It was, I wish that you'd kept your earbuds in just so we could have gotten you up on the mic just a little bit more, but
Okay.
it was beautiful. And so you mentioned really quickly that this was a part of scoring for a play for Burning
Yeah.
Bones Physical Theater, to me as we were planning our conversation out. And so this was your first opportunity to do a full score in that way.
Yeah. So like I've been playing guitar for 30 years, which is that's a weird thing to be able to say about anything. Um, but I've been playing and writing music for a long, long, long time. And I've never done like soundtrack work
Mhm.
really. Um, and then in the last year, oddly coinciding with like coming out, in the last year or so, friends have been approaching me about doing stuff like that. For instance, my friend Kit, at for Fringe Festival a couple of years ago, they produced a show called Madhouse, about, oh gosh, what is the name of the journalist? Um, uh, there was a journalist in New York in the late 1800s who had herself committed to a mental health facility, or back then an insane asylum.
Believe that was Nellie Bly.
Nellie Bly, thank you so much. It was in the back of my brain somewhere. Um, and so Kit like produced this incredible show for it, that involved puppetry and live video projections. It was very involved. And they had me playing live noise guitar on stage during the show to soundtrack it, and that was some of the most fun I've had in my entire life. It was so great to be able to do that. Um, but then my uh, but then uh, my friend Frankie, with Burning Bones Physical Theater, approached me about writing the score for a show that they were producing called Small Mouth Sounds. Um, and Small Mouth Sounds it's a two acts like comedy drama. Um, but Burning Bones Physical Theater does uh, is Butoh style dance. And so they performed the show, but throughout it, there were all of these like dance numbers. And so that's what I was writing for. And it was really interesting because like um, all of these dance numbers were like based around strong emotions. So like the show opened with anger, and then there were, there was sorrow, there was joy. And so I had these like really strong um points of reference to write from. And as a result, the music turned out like really turned out very very it was a very dynamic score. Um and I found myself doing things that I had never done before as a musician. There was a lot of like, I programmed drums. I taught myself how to program drums, and that was interesting. And did a lot of I got much better at mixing my own music, which is something that I'm still like working on improving. Um, but yeah, I did a lot of writing, and it was really cool to be able to sit in a room, like bring a piece of music into a room and see people move to it, and then have those people give me feedback like, um, could we have just a tiny bit more energy like right at the very beginning? Is that, is there a way that this section can repeat so that this move can like line up with, and like getting that feedback and then getting to go back and write more and remix. And it was a very collaborative process, as all theater is, and it was really rewarding. And getting to like sit in the audience like after the show opened, and and just see it, on its feet. It was so cool. It was so cool, like as a musician who's used to, you know like being in my bedroom and just like playing guitar for nobody. um it was cool to be part of a process that was like, that involved like a dozen people. It was really cool.
Isn't it so fun when you get into a collaborative process like that and you start yes-anding each other? Like it's not that you've messed up by not knowing that you didn't you that that energy moment was supposed to happen there. And it's not like, oh, well, this is my piece. I get to say, like they're asking for what they need. And so you're providing that answer by your creativity. And so you just keep building and iterating together. And I love
Yeah,
it when that vibe gets built.
it's so cool, right? Like, I mean, I don't like, you're currently working on a one person show.
Yes,
um
but yes, and
yes,
and
and
I have some creative collaborators. Like that's what was got me so sparkly when you were talking about this, because I got to work with a young person to edit some music because I'm actually doing a dance at the beginning of that piece.
oh my gosh, this is exciting. I love that.
And so I connected with this young guy who's an incredible music editor, and now he's actually interning with me. And so I got into put together, so because the show takes place, like the subtitle of the piece is existential angst and search for purpose at the dawn of the millennium. And I know, right?
It's very Tony Kushner of you. I love
I
it.
know. So I got him to put together some pieces that had like No Doubt and Alanis Morissette and the Cranberries, and like music to like really locate us, like hyper locate us of like white woman in that late 90s period of time, you know?
It was a time of blockbuster music. It was a time.
Exactly. Yes, exactly.
It was a
And
time of
he
Case Logic CD holders. Yes.
Right. And he had no cultural context for that, but he loved it so much. Like he really got into the music and he got into the editing and he got into the like making cassette click sounds in it and all of the fun stuff of it. I'll have to send you the piece that he created for me.
I want to hear this.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, oh my gosh, I miss having a tape deck so much. I need to get one.
And
Because that was, Yeah, I was like I feel like making mixtapes and then making mix CDs and I guess now making playlists, which is
Mm,
a lot less exciting.
not the same.
Um has kind of over the course of like my adolescence and adulthood like become my superpower, like a secret superpower.
Mhm.
Like this is not at all a humble brag. This is a just straight up rag. I've heard from a number of people who I've made mix CDs for that like it's like, oh my gosh, like no, I still have that. I listen to it still. That mix CD you made changed my life. Like
Good.
that's an
And
amazing thing to hear.
did you decorate the cases too?
It lately I've gotten into cutting pages out of magazines um and sort of taping that together into a little envelope so there is like an illustration on it. And then I've got a couple of pads of so my lolo, my grandfather, was a doctor, and when I was a small child, he had a small family practice in Paw Paw, Michigan, and I've got a we were cleaning out his house years ago when he died, um, and I came across a bunch of like prescription pads from that old family practice, and so I've been using that to write the track lists on. uh,
It's this your music prescription.
it is. It's exactly that. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, just listen to Emma Ruth Rundle twice a week. Okay.
in, in large, loud doses.
Yes.
Um, so at the beginning of our conversation, I said this conversation feels like it could go down two paths, and I wanted to, get back to the place where we, didn't go down the other path, which is to talk about your becoming of your new self.
Yes.
Um, how do you want to approach that conversation? I will say one thing that's interesting is that I'm going to have another trans person on as a part of this month of Pride, and she also had that journey largely as in during the pandemic, and so I think this is an interesting like journey.
I really I really really hope that there is some doctor or sociologist or somebody out there studying the effect that the that COVID had on um on the transgender community,
Mhm.
because like as a pandemic baby, um I know that I am far from being alone. There were a lot the pandemic managed to crack a lot of eggs, um and it's just it's an interesting phenomenon that I hope somebody's looking into, because yeah, it is widespread, what happens when everybody is locked inside and like has nothing to do but introspect.
Well, and I want to get back to you, but I think it cracked a lot of eggs in good and bad ways. I mean, I mean,
Yes, but like
you know,
in the the transgender like
yes,
terminology, like the cracking an egg is
yes,
like yeah.
yes, you were germinating. I get it, I get it, I get it. But I mean, like it was like the universe said, "All right, everybody, sit your ass down, and
Mm-hmm.
now deal with whatever's been like pushed back here all this time.
Yes,
All come to
yeah.
the front." Yeah, I get it. So, how shall we proceed?
Okay, well, I guess one thing that I sort of like offering to people, since I am such an oversharer by nature, and am absolutely not easily offended whatsoever. Do you have any weird like do you have any like left field weird curiosity questions about trans life that like you might be like you may not want to like just flat out ask somebody? Like, do you have anything like that?
Not about body stuff, but here's one of the things I want to reflect on. Um, I think you and I feel like both very different people than we when we first used to get to like run into each other.
I feel like that's true. Yes.
I I used to project all of this that human doesn't like me onto the every encounter we had. And that was a lot about me and the story that I was making up in my head. And I wonder if some of what I was experiencing was the discomfort that you had in life that is changing now.
I was constantly uncomfortable um in my own skin. Um one of the one of the ways that I know for sure that I am transgender and what I'm experiencing is very real. Um is that like I know that um for the majority of my life, um I have been kind of a miserable bastard. Um I existed in a fog of depression and anxiety, and it clouded absolutely everything. Experiencing joy was something that was like very hard for me to do. Um, and I just thought that like that was a norm. I thought that was normal. Like I thought it was completely normal to just be like kind of just like angry all of the time. Um, and it's not. That's not normal whatsoever. Um, and once I got on hormone replacement therapy, I've been on a fun cocktail of estradiol and progesterone and spironolactone for a little over 2 years now. And in the last year, like after cresting the 1 year mark, one thing I started noticing happening was uh like it's hard to notice something that's not there. Um, but I started realizing that like, hey, like I don't I don't feel like this like ambient like anger. I don't feel this like just all consuming sadness coursing through me anymore. Like I that seems to have for the in large part gone away. Um and I definitely credit that a lot to the hormones. Like estrogen is the human body's crazy. Um like forget about forget about gender, forget about all of that other all the politics of everything that that surrounds the conversation about transness. I was running on a testosterone based system, and when I started replacing that with estrogen and reducing my testosterone, I became a happier person. And for whatever else that means, that like that core thing, that's kind of enough for me. Like I like I installed a different operating system and I'm better. Um the girl part is like that's just icing. That's like I love having breasts. They're great. I've been having a lot of fun growing them. But like and getting to dress however I want. And like honestly, all that stuff I could do that before. I just wouldn't let myself. Um, but it's but the for me and this, that every trans person is completely different. Like no, there is no one universal um way of being trans. There's no one universal trans experience. But for me, being on HRT has made all of the difference in the world. And I am a much better, happier person now that I've been on. And yeah, Freaking hooray.
Can I tell you something? I also am on estradiol. My say,
Hey, what's your
often.
dosage? I'm on 6 milligrams a day. How are you doing it?
I don't. I mean, I've got the little packet, the gel that I rub on my inner thigh.
Oh, nice.
Um,
Okay, cool. Yeah. No, I know a couple of girls who are on the
yeah,
gel.
I often joke to myself as I'm putting it on that it's also my gender affirming. You
For
know,
real. That's very real. Yeah.
yes,
Like
yeah,
it's gender affirming care is not just for trans people.
right,
Cis
yes,
people get gender affirming care all of the time.
yeah,
If you've treated yourself for hair loss, guess what? Like
yeah, yeah. But I have to say, I also identify with what you're saying in terms of having just that sort of constant level of noise of just the things you're having to suppress, quiet down. I don't feel like there's a 2-year-old running around inside my brain all the time,
that
which
is such
wasn't
a good
like
image. Yeah.
that wasn't going all the way back to when we first started getting to know each other, but it was definitely getting louder, like one more fucking like leaf blower in my neighborhood. Anyway, yeah. But also I think one of the ways that I've changed in the time that we've known each other is this like coming into my power of becoming a storyteller and stopping suppressing that. Um,
Yes.
so I think one of the things that happens when you stop suppressing and come into whoever it is you're meant to be, and you let the world go away in that way, you just like really come into all of your sense of possibility and purpose, then I think all of the stories that you make up about what you think is happening in other people's brains and all of those narratives that like keep us locked inside ourselves, it really, I think the world can become easier to navigate. I mean, there's also like still systemic oppression and like lots of other things that like will enrage you, but I think that generalized anxiety of like going to a party or the other things that made it really hard for me for a long time have gotten a lot easier. And that's why I love seeing people like you, because I don't have to worry about if you're going to mean girl me anymore.
That makes me so happy. Like look at us being healthier people. I love that for us.
Yeah.
Like yeah, and definitely like I mean I got into therapy early on in the pandemic when we were in lockdown before I came out. Um so like getting on there, like I remember one of the conversations that I had in my head, um what like when I was still sort of like playing with gender and like struggling with struggling with my gender. um I remember having a conversation in my head like, okay girl, listen, get on antidepressants first and then we can talk about HRT. And that being like the first time that I like mentally like acknowledged like, yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm trans. I think my mind's made up that I need to get on the medicine.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Are you seeing a therapist?
Oh, yes. I
Thank
believe it's
Yeah,
like the highest form of healthcare. I wish that
that's real.
everybody felt, I mean, I also take breaks from it because there are times when I'm like, all right, I feel good right now and I don't really need to do it, but it doesn't take long before I'm like, okay, it's time to get back into it. I got, this, that, or the other thing I need to work on.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like I've entered sort of the maintenance phase
Hmm.
of therapy where it's like, I once I have healthcare again, it's like, yeah, I'll see you once a month
Hmm.
and I'm okay. I don't need to be going in every week
Yeah.
anymore. I used to desperately need that. And now I'm better.
Yeah. So I feel like it would be a huge mistake if I didn't make sure to bring up one of the most beautiful community things that you help to host, which is Right Club Atlanta.
Yes.
Um, so one of my small claims to fame is that I was in the very first Right Club and also the first person on the first night at Carapace. So Right Club Atlanta is well, You can do the spiel better than I can. Tell us
Yeah,
about.
I'll do the I'll give you the elevator pitch. Right Club is a combative live literary show. We each month book 6 writers. We pair them off against one another, assign them opposing concepts to write about, blood versus bone, love versus hate, fate versus free will, that sort of thing. They get a couple of weeks to write, and then on the night of the show, we put them up in front of an audience that we have jazzed up with booze and loud music, and they get 7 minutes apiece and 7 minutes only to read in front of our audience, and the audience picks a winner. It is kind of like it's it's like a poetry reading in the same way that a piano recital is like a Sex Pistols gig. It is so much fun. It's like we've kept it going for 14 years, and that rattles me. That is crazy that we've been able to keep it up for 14 years. That's bonkers. But like it hasn't got any less fun. It's still like it's so cool. Like it's such a cool show. Like I'm so happy to be like one of the stewards of it that asks Atlanta to get up on a stage and scream at us every month.
Yeah. What I'm always struck with when I go is how there's such a variety of people who are trying on different things when they do their writing. You have people who demonstrate like incredible vulnerability to some like pretty funny pieces, to that a
Mm-hmm.
piece can't be funny and vulnerable, to complete fiction. Like there's like a really it's a pretty big swath of things that can still happen in this container.
Yeah, because we don't do, the only prompt that we give people is the one word.
Mm,
um like genre approach, that's all up to you. Like what I tell people is that, like, I mean, we asked you to do this because we know that you're good. You know what you do well.
yeah.
Just do that, but do it better and louder. um and yeah, like I love it when people bring like this at this last show, our October show at Dad's Garage. um Stephen Williams did poetry, like did actual like rhyming verse about like Atlanta infrastructure. It was awesome.
Nice.
um and yeah, we've definitely had some like unprocessed trauma on stage. But like there's yeah, we've had science fiction. We've had like people, we've had combatants secretly collaborate with one another and create this like
In that, yeah, yeah.
yeah, like it, all kinds of shenanigans happen on that stage, and it's just, I think, a testament to how creative um Atlanta writers are. uh
Mhm.
that um that yeah, it's not just a show of people ranting. It is a show of people, like, that get on stage and really want to, like, they want to bring it because
Mhm.
they know what the stakes are.
Yeah.
And the stakes are a tiny plastic trophy, and
So,
the adoration of, like, you know 150 of their fellow citizens.
yeah, absolutely. Because it's a big audience set. Like you, we used to be at Highland Ballroom, and now you've got a nice steady gig at Dad's Garage. So it's a huge theater.
Yeah, we've traveled through many Atlanta venues, and we've finally settled on Dad's Garage, and I feel quite at home there. We I feel like they're taking care of us quite well.
Beautiful. So, often in these shows, toward the end, I will ask people to do one of two things to help them tell a story. Either you can pick one of the four words and
Okay.
talk about one of these four words, or we can do a random number generator
Mm.
and you will tell me a story about yourself at that age. And it could be in the
Ooh.
future.
Ooh, let's try that.
Yeah.
Let's
Okay.
try that.
Okay. Tell me when to stop.
Stop.
14.
14. Oh God. What a horrible, ugly, amazing age. What grade was I in at 14? Was that 7th grade? Or is that the beginning of high school? Okay, I'm just gonna consider that to be like the beginning of like freshman year.
It is, yeah, typically.
Yeah, freshman year of high school. Whew. Um, I I went through a horrendous breakup. My first year of high school. Um, I didn't take getting my heart broken very gracefully. Um, I went a little crazy. I am a Gemini Libra, if in case anybody's wondering. Um, but I do remember. Oh my goodness, the summer between um the summer between freshman and sophomore year. Um, I was half-heartedly kind of allowing somebody to date me. Like I was in this weird liminal space of like there was a girl I we were seeing one another, I think, and then a she went off to band camp over the summer. We stopped seeing one another, and my family took us on a family trip to St. Augustine, Florida. Um and like I remember one of my cousins brought along a friend of hers from her tiny hometown in southern Illinois. Um and her and I were like the same age, and uh got to be pretty close over like the few days that we were like in like this weird tourist town together, wandering around through the streets of St. Augustine, finding uh finding like the one cool punk record store, finding all of the used bookstores in St. Augustine, and like I was on a journey right then of reading through the Hitchhiker's Guide series, and every time I finished one book, I would just like wander into a used bookstore and buy the next one. Um, because they were inevitably always there. Um, but yeah, at the like, it was the kind of thing where it's like I think that like I had definitely developed a crush. They're a very cute girl. And we had so much in common. But you know, at the end of this trip, she was going to go back up north, and I was going to go back to Georgia, and probably we're never going to see one another in person ever again. But then a few months later, uh, the envelopes started showing up at my house, like
Mhm.
like manila envelopes that had been like very heavily decorated, and was stuffed full of like, you know, a long cool letter just talking about what she was up to, and then like a bunch of other little trinkets and goodies and stuff. And so I started writing back, and like likewise would start like decorating the envelopes and doing all of these things, stuffing them full of little goodies. And we had this like correspondence for like a couple of years, and it was it, we don't I feel like people don't have the same sort of like publishing worthy correspondence that say like, you know, uh R- Rainier Maria Rilke, you know, had, or like Anne Lamont had, um you know, these authors of, you know, of the past had. But for me, like that was mine. That like our little correspondence where we would just like talk about whatever. But like the important thing was the doing it. The important thing the was the effort. The important thing was the important thing were the envelopes, really. Just these like bright, flashy, like showy art pieces that we were sending one another. Uh yeah, I missed that, but it was a that was a really that was a really delightful uh thing that I was able to have um thanks to her uh at that very young, very stupid age.
Mm.
Um yes.
The important thing is the doing it. And how true is that in so much of art making, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm curious, do you have any advice for me as I go to make this show? Like,
Mm.
what do I need to be thinking about?
Well, I mean, my first piece of advice is you know what you do well, just do that, but do it bigger and louder.
Mhm.
Um, but I think that, and like, thanks also for putting me on the spot. This feels like very big edit of me to like be trying to give like anybody advice about writing of any sort. But when I when I go to write a write club piece, um, the first thing that I the first thing I think of is like, okay, what is it that I have to say about this? Like, what is it that I like perhaps naively, perhaps foolishly think that I have to impart about this thing? And then how can I wrap it in a story? Um, and often that story is like just like a moment. Like it doesn't have like it's not a story. It's hardly ever a story that has like an enormous like long long night's journey into day sort of arc. It's always just like there's this little like James Joyce Dubliner's like moment of of realization, of revelation. um and I find that for me focusing on a moment of learning, um a moment of like realizing something, a moment of like figuring something out for myself, um is what like often like drives a story. It is what provides like sort of like the engine for a telling to happen. Um so yeah, I would just like um my advice would just be like, just like like consider that moment where you went from not knowing something to knowing something, where you went from ignorance to learning. Like there's usually something there.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you so much for inviting me to do this. This was a delight. Thank you for giving me space to prattle on for long periods of time. I appreciate it.
Well, it's just been an honor and a privilege to get to know you better and to think about things like passion and purpose and to see you light up
Thank
with
you.
these things.
We adore alliteration, so
Yes, indeed. Yes. Well, so folks that are listening, we will repost June's conversation as well as all of her delicious ways that you can follow her. Right Club happens once a month, and June has her own accounts that you can follow and her website.
mhm.
And uh, I'm a little teapot coming soon. We don't know when, we don't know
uh
where, but
I'm I'm so excited. I already know you're gonna kill it. Like I'm very much looking forward to this. So
well,
I'm glad that you're doing it. I'm glad you're putting the work to do it.
Yeah. Oh, and you know what I meant to celebrate? This is the I've been doing these conversations with people for a year now, because I started with Pride 1 year ago, with a conversation with a beautiful trans person from alternate roots, who lives in New Orleans. So as we were getting ready to get on this call, I was like, wow, I can't believe we've been having these. I've started on Instagram Live, but then I realized those don't get archived. So that's why we moved to YouTube Live. So it's just so lovely to continue the process of having these public research, deep conversations with people. And thank you so much, June. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and thanks to everyone else. Bye.